welcome to the Bible class of Jews for Jesus with Bob Mendelsohn.
Luke chapter 22. It begins by telling us that the feast of unleavened bread drawing near, it's called Passover, okay? And then it's going to culminate in the very sad denial of Yeshua by his closest friends, especially Peter. There are all kinds of reactions to the person of Yeshua from every one of us at any one of our times of rejecting or mocking, or our times of conciliation with him. So it begins, the Feast of Unleavened Bread drew near, which is called Passover, and some people were seeking how they might put Yeshua to death. The chief priests and scribes, it says, because they were afraid of the people. What does that say to you? Why are the people's persona, or the people's activity, or the people's response to Yeshua, why does that affect, in a very mal-affecting way, the priests and scribes? Some of the people were favorable towards Yeshua. As a result, some of the leadership decided that they were going to get rid of him because they wanted to curry the favor of the people more than they wanted Yeshua to curry it. That'd be generous. They really were more interested in their own respect than they were about the condition of the Jewish-Roman hostility. What's a good leader supposed to do when he sees another rising in fame or honor? What should a good leader do? Collaborate, work with him, give him the honor that everyone else is giving him, and even follow him if he becomes the next leader. Exactly right. And these guys were depicting everything but that. They were jealous of him. Yes. They were annoyed by him because their popularity was failing. Do you remember in the play, later movie, Amadeus, when Salieri, who was the court musician, saw the young Wolfgang Mozart rising in fame, and he hated him because he was Amadeus. He was loved by God, because he was favored, because he had the blessing of God, and Salieri did not. And he was jealous, and the story has him almost painting him into the corner, almost causing the death of Mozart. Satan entered into Judas, verse 3. We're going to see Satan a couple times tonight. Entered into Judas, who's called Iscariot, Ish-Kiriot, the man of that village, belonging to the number of the 12. Kind of an odd way to say he was one of the 12. And he went away and discussed with the chief priests and officers how he might betray him to them. They were glad, agreed to give him money. He consented, began to look for a good opportunity to betray him when Yeshua and he were apart from the crowd. This is horrible. This is not just human invention. This is not Judas saying, I'm going to be political. This is Judas saying, I'm going to get some cash out of the deal. And he really lost the plot. He was one of the 12, but 8% of the 12 falls away. Not by natural condition, but by satanic influence. No wonder we're going to see later Yeshua prays for Peter, so that doesn't happen to him. The contrast is clear. When you see somebody who used to walk with us and they've fallen away, they're walking away, the first thing you want to do is attribute that not to human activity, but to Satan himself. And you want to stand against Satan, not only on behalf of that one person, but on behalf of those whom he might influence, the others of the 12. You want to stand in prayer for your brothers. That's the best thing. That's part of being community. Then this issue begins in verse 7 that ends in about verse 20. This is when Yeshua institutes what we call communion, or Messiah's Supper. It is a beautiful picture of his relationship with us. He sends out two fellows, Peter and John, to go and make preparations. Preparing for the Passover matters. In fact, some of you might know we are preparing for Passover already here in Jews for Jesus Australia, because on the 19th of April this year, first night of Passover, we're going to conduct a Passover banquet, but not in Sydney. But you're invited, but not to the banquet in Melbourne where I'm going to be conducting it. So you say, well, how can I participate? In Facebook on a watch party. And your friends of friends of friends on Facebook will be able to join you. You'll understand in due course. That's not the point of tonight's lesson. You'll understand, and you'll be able to have a banquet or a meal at your home or with your community of faith, wherever. A small group, 3 of you, 10 of you, 100 of you, can gather anywhere. Someone does all the cooking, someone does all the cleaning, and I'll conduct the banquet on the internet. So preparations are already happening like that now. John and Peter were sent to go and prepare the Passover for all the others of the community, that they might eat it. Yeshua is not a former Jew. Yeshua is the consummate Jew. And when it comes time for Passover to happen, he doesn't say, I think I'll take Easter and go roll some eggs and have a chocolate bunny. He says, let's have Passover together because we're Jews. And that's what Jews do. And Passover celebrates the anniversary of the redemption of the Exodus. Yeshua is going to make it even a greater Exodus. They said, boss, where do you want us to prepare it? He says, when you go into town, you'll see a guy carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him. Why does that stand out? Why does the guy carrying a pitcher of water stand out? Because women carried water in those days, not men. And if a guy, maybe he's a single man, maybe that's why he's going to understand why 11, 12, 13 single guys want to have a meal together. It's a brother's fellowship. Whatever the reason, we don't know. But the guy carrying a pitcher, unusual. Follow him into the house that he enters. You've got to see the scene, how bizarre that would be. Here you are, a fella carrying a pitcher of water, right? You're a single man. You carry a pitcher of water. You go into your house, and these 2 other fellows, Peter and John, come right behind you, wedge their feet in the door, and they say, excuse me, we need to join you tonight. Bizarre, and yet the man carrying water has faith. Faith that, okay, follow him to the house he enters and say to the owner of that house, the teacher says, where's the guest room? We need to have a meal here. And he'll show you a large furnished upper room. That's where you prepare it. So they went and they found everything just like Yeshua told them, and that's where they prepared the Passover. This response of obedience is so beautiful to see by Peter, by John, by the guy carrying water, and the owner of the house. Everybody lined up with the plan of God. You got to see that as bizarre and holy at the same time. So the hour comes, he reclines at the table. A lot of Christians miss that. Recline. Why did he recline? We're redeemed. We're free men. We can recline now. Yeah. We're not standing and serving our master. No. We are masters, and so we can recline at table. Yeah. This is pretty cool. We're redeemed, and Yeshua's reclining. And the apostles with him. Awesome. Everybody's enjoying the redemption of Egypt. And he said, I really wanted to eat this before I suffer. I tell you, I'm not going to eat this again until next time in the kingdom. He took a cup, gave thanks, and said, take this, share it among yourselves. That's not communion. That's just kiddush. It's just kiddush. I'm not going to drink this anymore until the kingdom comes. And he took some bread and he gave thanks, broke it and gave. Now we know this is later in the meal from the other Gospels. Pretty remarkable. When do you break bread for meals? At the very beginning, after you wash your hands, and at the very beginning. That's when you break bread. So we don't pick it up in Luke, but we do get it in the others, that in the middle of the meal, Yeshua took bread and broke it. You say, wait a minute. It's almost, if you will, a subroutine. Can I be mathematical? So here's the meal, and here's the beginning, and this is when you break the bread. Yeshua, in the middle of the meal, breaks bread again. What's he doing? He's actually creating a new meal inside another meal. This meal that we eat, we call it the Seder, right? And that's to remind us about Egypt and that God delivered us from Egypt. This red box, the new meal, is to tell about sin and deliverance from that. A meal inside a meal, both of which talk about God delivering us. One from the power of one from the power of Pharaoh and the other from the power of Satan. That's pretty remarkable. A meal within a meal, and it always begins with the breaking of bread. Many Christians use the term breaking of bread to mean communion. That's acceptable if they understand that breaking bread also means let's eat together. Acts 2 verse 42, and they continued steadfastly in the apostles' teaching and breaking of bread and in prayer. When you read that in Acts 2, it doesn't mean they had communion. It means they ate together and they fellowshiped one another. Take this and he gave thanks. He broke broke it, gave it. This is my body, Zegufi. This is my body given for you. It never says broken, by the way. Just FYI, it's given for you because his bones were not broken. After they had eaten, see, so they'd already had the beginning of the meal, now they're in the meal, and he takes the cup. So bread and cup, that's the inner meal. This cup which is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. New covenant, strange phrase, new covenant, a new agreement, a new charter. What's so new about it? By the way, the phrase new covenant, ever heard of it before in the record of Scripture? Prophet, but not Ezekiel. Jeremiah 31, that's right. Jeremiah 31:31. Behold, God says, days are coming when I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel. Not like the covenant I made with them when I brought them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, although I was a husband to them. So this new covenant, the red, is different than the blue covenant. The blue, pardon me for those of you online, maybe we'll draw it for you later. But the blue covenant, that meal that we're taking, is a beautiful rendering and a reminder of God delivering us out of Egypt. He says, now I'm going to make a new covenant with you, not like the blue one, my covenant which you broke, although as a husband to you. But this, he says in Jeremiah, is the covenant I'll make with them after those days. I'll write my law in their hearts. They'll all know me from the least to the greatest. For I'll forgive their sin and remember their iniquity no more. The writer of Hebrews picks that up. Everybody who knows Messiah needs to know Jeremiah 31:31 and following. The red here is the better covenant. The red here is forgiveness of sin, not deliverance from Pharaoh, but deliverance from a tyrant far worse. Make sense? 21, Yeshua says, somebody's going to betray me, and it's with me. His hand is with me on the table. The Son of Man's going to, as it has been determined, but woe to that man by whom he is betrayed. He said, I wonder who's going to do this. They didn't know. Then there arose a dispute about who's going to be the greatest. One of us is going to go out and muck this thing up. And but I wouldn't do that. No, I'm good. Actually, Pete, you're pretty good. No, I'm the greatest. And James, no, I am the greatest. Sounds like Muhammad Ali. I am the greatest. And Yeshua takes this opportunity to say, fellas, who's greater, the one who reclines at the table or the one who serves? In human terms, the one who reclines at table. So he says, I'm among you, though, as one who serves. Verse 27. You're not going to be like the Goyim. You're not going to be like the Romans who are subjugating us. You're going to be free to serve. Not free from service, but free to serve. That's your goal. Every one of you in this class, whether listening online or here in this Bible classroom, every one of you has a goal. I want to serve God and I want to serve other people. If your goal is to be sitting at table reclining and being served, you're in the wrong room. Your goal and your purpose is to serve others. How that works out is between you and the Almighty and some of your friends who help you get there. It should not be among you the way the Romans do it. We're going to do it differently. Verse 28, you're those who've stood by me in my trials. And the Father gave me a kingdom. I'm going to give you one. You'll eat and drink at my table in my kingdom. You'll sit on thrones judging the 12. What a big vision cast that Yeshua gives. Hey guys, this is a lot more than getting Rome off our tail. You got to know we're going out from here and we're going to rule the earth. And you 12, you're in on it. And beyond the 12, there are going to be lots of others with you because there are myriads, not just 100. There are myriads, not just the 5,000. There are myriads of people, not even just Israelites, but peoples of all nations, kindred, tribes, and tongues who are going to join this community. And you're going to be with me in my kingdom. You'll sit on thrones. You'll judge the 12. And come on, it's big. So then he turns to Peter. Verse 31, it says, Simon, listen, Satan demanded permission to sift you like wheat, but I've prayed for you. I can't do what I do without God helping me. You can't do what you're called to do unless God helps you. And it's not just to give you some kind of strength, but to give you capacity to withstand wrong. I've prayed for you, he says, that your faith may not fail. Because that is the end of anybody who's walking with God. If your faith fails, it doesn't matter how much religion you practice. If it's not personal, it's nothing. Now, we talked about that Monday night at One New Man, that it's not private, it is personal. And that's an important lesson to keep track. And in all of our personal relationship with God, it includes others. You all are in this together. Look, and even in the blue covenant, who was included in the blue? All Israel. All Israel was included in the blue. The Old Covenant, 3 million Jewish people escaped Egypt. So who's included in the red covenant? In the new covenant? Well, everyone who names the name of Yeshua. Everyone who believes. Whosoever believes. Whoever touches the hem of his garment. So it's all, the mathematical term, all of us, which means it's not you alone. There's nothing worse than being lonely in a crowd. Oh, there may be other things that are worse. Sorry, but that's a pretty bad thing. And if you follow the Australian Jews for Jesus blog, today I wrote about loneliness. And it is, I think, a pretty good one for you, for everyone, to have a read. It's also, I linked it to our Jews for Jesus Australia Facebook page. So the blog, whatever. Because alone is not lonely. You can be alone and you're satisfied, you're with God, it's cool. You need times apart. Yeshua had times apart, and he needed times together. And Peter here represents well us. And Yeshua prays for him. Does that strengthen you? Yeshua prayed for you today. Yeshua prayed for you today. Each one of us, he prayed for us. We read in the book of Hebrews that he ever lives to make intercession for us. That means he goes between, he intercedes. He's the mediator of that new covenant. Not just once, but today. Hallelujah. Yeshua prayed for me. What do I want to do for each of you? I want to pray for you. What do you want to do for your folks? What do you want to do for the people in your sphere of influence? You want to pray for them. Satan has demanded my next door neighbor. I'm not going to let him. I'm going to pray for him. That kind of thing. That's what you want to do. It's intercession. And then Peter, in his, God bless him, boastfulness, says, thanks a lot, but I've got this one. I got this one. What does he say? Lord, I'm ready to go both to prison and to death. I tell you what, I got this covered. Yeshua says, Peter, the rooster's not going to crow today until you've denied him 3 times. Until you've denied that you know me 3 times. Being arrogant is not the same as being confident in God. If you know you, you know arrogance makes no sense. If you know your own capacity to fail, Yeshua knows that. That's why he prays for you. Then we ought to say, thank you. Thanks when Frank wants to pray for me, or Tom wants to pray for Frank, or Rochelle wants to pray for Jane. Look, when that happens, don't say, look, there's the story of the guy who he's driving around, at Westfield at Christmas time. Good luck finding a car park, right? I mean, everybody and their brother's driving in there, and you've only got, 2-3 hours, depending on which Westfield it is. You're driving around and you see, and then somebody's in it, or a little tiny smart cars, and oh man. So this guy heard that God actually answers prayer, and he wasn't much of a believer, but he said, tell you what, God, if you get me a space to park in, then I'll go to church on Christmas. And he no sooner had said, I'll go to church on Christmas, than a guy backs up right in front of him, and he said, never mind, God, I got this one. Look, if you're smart, you know that you deserve the pits of hell, and God in his grace extends kindness to you. So if somebody says, I want to pray for you, you say, thank you. And what can I say to pray for you? Look, share in prayer. That's awesome. The way it should be. So he said to the guys in verse 35, when I sent you out without anything, you didn't have an American Express card, you didn't have money, you didn't have bag, you didn't have sandals. How'd it work out for you? Did you lack for anything? They said, no, nothing. He said, but now, if you got a money belt, take it with you, and you got a bag, and you got a sword, and so he sends us out at different times with different stuff. Don't say, well, God sent me to Russia in 2014, and I went through Singapore, and that's how I got there. So I'm going to go again, and I'm sure that's the route because God did that last time. And I prayed, and somebody handed me a ticket. I think this time I'm going to do the same thing. Well, God sometimes says, why don't you work the last 5 years, and you'll have some cash, and then you can go and buy your own ticket to go to Moscow. Or last time I raised funds this way, this time I'm just going to pray. He said, well, that's good, but maybe you should have a bake sale or a car wash, or get out and work, or whatever it is. Look, every time he doesn't send us the same way. Listen, therefore, to God. Do what God said and do what God says. Don't just go on vapors. Don't go on last year God said something, but this year maybe God is saying something. else. Keep listening. I tell you, that which is written must be fulfilled. And this is verse 37. He was numbered with the transgressors. That's Isaiah 53. They said, Lord, look, there's 2 swords. He says, fine, Dayenu. How Passover-like was that? It's enough. Take 2 swords. It didn't say, everybody, all 12 of you, everybody needs your own sword. Wait here until everybody's gone to the sword store and then come back. No, 2 swords, that'll do. There comes a time when you mount defense, and there's a time when you mount offense, and a time when you don't do either. Did it say, go out and kill people? Look, well, we're going to get to it. Hang in there. Verse 39, he came out and proceeded as far as was his custom up to the Mount of Olives. Disciples followed him. He got there and he said, pray. He's already said, I've prayed for you, Simon. Now he turns to the guys and says, you pray that you may not enter temptation. Then he went a stone's throw away, knelt down and started praying. Tell you what, God, this is a big one. This is a heavy one. If you will, take this cup from me. The last cup we saw was he was drinking at the Seder. Is that the cup he's referencing? No. Why not? Did he carry a cup with him? So what's this cup referencing? It's a cup of suffering. In Luke 12, he already said that when they said, can we sit at your right hand or left hand? He said, you don't know what you're talking about. Are you willing to or able to drink of the cup that I'm going to drink? And it wasn't a cup of Passover. It was the cup of suffering. There are lots of metaphors for this idea of the cup of suffering, and it is clear. But I love that Yeshua is human, don't you? He's not just God the Son. He's the Son of God. He's Son of Man. He's Son of God. As Son of Man, he is completely human. So he got weary and he sat down by Jacob's well in John chapter 4, and he's a bit anxious about what is ahead of him in just moments. What's going to happen to him is the cross. And if you understand what he understood, that he was going to be numbered with the transgressors, which he just cited, if Isaiah 53 is going to be fulfilled in his being, that he's going to die for the sins of the Jewish people and all people, then you know the massive weight that this is. And if that be so, then you might want to turn and say, you know, I'm not sure I can make this, but not my will, yours be done. What was he saying? My human will, my desire, my recommendation is, let's get me out of this. He's speaking honestly as a human. He's not saying, I hate you, God. He's saying, I wish there were another way, but there isn't. There's only one way to peace through the power of the cross. I'm going to take it. I'm going to go there because that's your will. An angel appeared, strengthening him. Isn't that great? I want to see that video. I mean, how does he do that? He comes up alongside, puts his arm around him, says, "On you, matey, you can do it. Come on." It's like those guys. I've been watching these winter sports skiing, extreme sports and other things on video lately, and I saw this video of this woman, an American champion, who is at the top of an incredibly steep ski, not jump, which would be intimidating itself, but a slalom race, and they go 120 kilometers an hour, zoom, on two little pieces of wood, sliding down a hill at breakneck speed. And there are people at the top who kind of go alongside, "You can do this. You're on. It's okay. You can do," and they're encouraging them, or the crowd's applauding, or they just are getting in the zone, they call it, where they can get down that mountain with not ease, but with success. And that's what I think the angel comes up to Yeshua and does. Look at 44. The word is a Greek word. Being in agony, he prayed fervently. The agony has nothing to do with physical pain. It's emotion and it's spirit. His spirit was heavy. He was praying very fervently. Sweat became like drops of blood. It wasn't blood. It was like drops of blood falling down upon the ground. He rose and he came to the disciples and he found them sleeping. And he said, "Why are you sleeping? Get up and pray." So prayer is the way to prepare for activities with God, in God, for God. You have to be pre-prayed to be prepared. Whether it's Simon, I've prayed for you, or whether you guys, I've asked you to pray for me, or he says to go pray for others. While he's talking, a crowd came, and one named Judas, one of the 12, was preceding them. He approached Yeshua to kiss him. "Are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" that screams at me to be honest about who I am and about those I say I love. Are you going to pretend one thing on the outside and live totally wrong on the inside? What is in your life is going to come out. So fine, you come up and you kiss me, but you and I both know you're betraying me. When they saw what was going to happen, Lord, shall we strike with the sword? There's one of those 2 swords that they had said, we've got a couple swords. He says that's enough. One of them, we know it was Peter, struck the slave of the high priest, we know his name was Malchus, and cut off his right ear. Yeshua said, no. Now get this, I want you to imagine the scene. Lord, Peter says, he pulls out his sword. Shall we strike with the sword? Whack! And Yeshua says, it might have been good to wait for the answer. He did glue it back on, didn't he? Yeah, he healed him. Yeah. He touched his ear and healed him, verse 51. So Yeshua, before he could answer the prayer or the question from Peter, has to go into more work. Here he is at the end of his healing and teaching career, and he's still got one more healing to go. The slave of the high priest. What kind of person would he be? What do we know about him? Malchus. Important? Not important?
He's a believer.
We do? We know that? We know he's a slave, so he has no rights. We know he works for the high priest, so he's in on some pretty heavy discussions, or eavesdropping anyway. And we know he's probably used that ear to hear some stuff about collusion between the high priest and some of the guys around who want to get rid of Jesus. And he's probably put his faith in the high priest, because what you hear becomes what you believe. Faith comes by hearing. And yet, Peter whacks his ear. Yeshua, who's been the object of scorn and repudiation, now takes that ear, puts it back on Malchus, and heals him. And my guess is that Malchus starts hearing what Yeshua says and not what the high priest has said. A little scene, but I like it. And if you can take that to the bank. Yeshua said, you came out here with swords and clubs as you would against a robber? Hey, every day I was hanging out with you guys. You didn't touch me. I was there in the temple, for goodness sakes, in public. They arrested him, they led him away, and Peter, as the scenes end tonight, Peter is going to be where the lens zooms in. The camera zooms in on Peter. What do we know about Peter? He's the head of the 12. He's a rock, yeah, Rocky. I mean, he's a strong character. He's a valiant leader. He's going to become the first pope. All right. No. No. Yeah, probably, if there were any of them in a papal position. So the contrast between all these people and their reactions to Yeshua is what I want you to see in Luke 22. Everybody's reacting. Malchus is going to react, the high priest, the soldiers, Peter's reacting, and Peter now is watching from a distance. Verse 54, they led Yeshua and brought him to the house of the high priest. Peter was following at a distance. What's an adjective you might want to include? At a safe distance. Why safe? Because if they just took your leader and you've been walking with him for 3 years, they might say, they're all wearing the same clothes. You've got your shirt for your favorite basketball team. You've got your shirt of your favorite Hawaiian, whatever that is. Everybody's got something that defines them. Puma or whatever, and if they start arresting the head of Puma and you've been walking with him for 3 years and you've got your Puma shirt on, I think I'm going to be following at a safe distance. See how that works? And they kindle a fire in the middle of the courtyard, and because it's Pesach, so it's kind of cold at night. And they sat down together. Peter's sitting among them, and a servant girl sees him in the firelight and says, she looks intently at him and says, hey, this guy was with the guy they just busted. He said, no, I don't know him. A little later, another said, no, you're one of them. Peter said, man, I'm not. An hour then passed, and another man began to insist, saying, no, I recognize you. You're a Galilean. Y'all talk like you're from Galilee. You have that kind of accent, that Galilean accent, sure enough. Peter said, man, I don't know what you're talking about. So 1, 2, 3 denials, and immediately, while he's speaking, a rooster crowed. Now that's bad enough that Peter heard the words again of Yeshua. But look what it says, verse 61. And if you get this, you'll understand conviction of sin. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord had told him, before a rooster crows today, you'll deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. The disappointment that Peter was to Yeshua aggravates the whole situation. It amplifies his own pain. It's bad enough when somebody says, hey, are you Messianic? You say, hey, no, I'm just aren't you a Jesus follower? Hey, no, I'm just a regular Jew. Hey, no, you sound Galilean. I think you were with that Messiah fellow, that Yeshua. And you say, no, I just want to be one of us. Boom. That's bad enough. But Yeshua turns and looks. Now, if you've ever disappointed your parents or a teacher or a boss, you probably have felt that internal clock, that internal alarm go off to say, yo, man, it was bad. But I want you to see something. Yeshua turns and looks at him. What's in that look? You both think it's negative. You think it's positive. You think it's negative, disappointment, I told you so. You have it down. He wanted to affirm in that look, Peter, you have not gone too far. Judas, when he understands his own failure, goes out and hangs himself. Yeshua looks at him to prevent such suicide. To say, not I told you so, like, ha, gotcha, but I told you I would pray for you. Satan demanded to sift you like wheat, but I'm going to intercede even in my pain. I'm with you. This is Emmanuel. This is God with us, who turns and looks at us not to punish us, but to affirm his love and loyalty to us. The look of love is in his eyes. And if you get that, you'll understand what you should do when you understand or recognize your own failures. When you fail, you haven't failed him enough that he doesn't love you. When you fail, you turn and look at him who's looking at you. And when you do that, you'll get it right. We're going to start next week with verse 63 and finish all of chapter 23 next week because of our time constraints tonight.
Before creation, before the world began, from earth's foundation, Yeshua